So Selina here from the Way to Healthy Living, and I am so excited to share with you one of the best meals that I found in working with the Real Wellness program with
Chef Billy from Shop Shop Cook.
I think we talked a couple of weeks ago about really finding our success in all of these summer picnics. We're out there, we're going to graduation parties, and we're going to picnics, and a lot of the traditional things are hamburgers, hot dogs, and mayonnaise-laden salads. Chef Billy, can you speak to the health or maybe not so healthy part of some of those things?
There's pros and cons, and really it comes down to moderation with some of those salads. They're extremely high in carbohydrates, which is not a great thing. The mayonnaise-based dressings are very rich. I mean, every one of us wants to be a polite guest and eat what's presented to us, but we also can take advantage of those potluck picnics where everyone's bringing a covered dish, and this is one of those recipes that fits perfectly into that scenario. The quinoa salad with grilled or roasted vegetables. This is something that you can have as a staple recipe for any day of the week. But then as a take-along dish, because of the dressing on it, it doesn't have to necessarily be kept so cold, not like a mayonnaise-based dressing, where it's going to be safe to put out on the table. It's going to assure that you have something that's going to fit within your wellness goals, but it's going to be something that's colorful and inviting and well.
And let's just pause you there for a minute. Staples. So one of the things that we're doing, the gardens are coming on, they're growing up, they're doing well.
Coming up nicely.
But one of the things that we love the most is to have the essential staples in our pantries and in our freezers. And one of my most favorite staples is actually the grilled vegetable special blends from Wegmans. I'm sure many other brands have those. And when you look at these ingredients, it's nothing but the grilled vegetables. It's amazing. And I use these for so many things, Billy. I mean, this is the pizza, this is the topping,
right.
This is the mix. So let's talk about why we love frozen so much more than canned.
When you're not in the summer season, when you're not in the fresh produce season in this part of the country, we tend to shy away from buying vegetables because they do get a little bit pricier when you're buying them in the produce shelf. But frozen vegetables are your second fresh. This is an excellent option, whether it's, like Selena said, for a pizza topping, as a salad inclusion, as a sandwich topper, rather than going for something like a mayonnaise-based sauce. Add some grilled vegetables to your sandwich. It's going to add moisture, but it's going to add crunch. It's going to add flavor. It's going to add. So you're replacing a condiment that's not so great for you with other flavors and textures that are amazing for you.
And so let's tell you a little story about quinoa. Just a really quick story. It was July 4th.
And it is pronounced quinoa, even though it's spelled way different.
It was July 4th. My son was coming home from Pittsburgh. He was coming home from a picnic, and I had embarked on a healthy journey. And what that healthy journey meant was that I replaced every traditional dish with something weird, something colorful, and according to him, something that no one knew how to spell.
Right.
So can you tell them a little bit about what quinoa actually is?
Okay, so quinoa is considered one of those, you hear about ancient grains, quinoa is one of them. Quinoa has been a staple food in Central and South America for centuries and for millennia, actually. Quinoa is actually a seed grass that has a very high protein content, and it's got a very high fiber content. And one of the reasons why it's so good for us is because we're actually consuming it as a whole grain. And I want to point out there's a big difference between having whole grains and just having things. Okay, so the difference between brown rice and whole grain brown rice is the bran is still there, and that's one of the triggers that helps our metabolism slow down and use those carbohydrates as fuel instead of just taking it on as excess calories. So with these, we have here the raw version. If you have this in your cupboard, if you have other whole grains, you can buy grain blends. Just watch on your grain blends to make sure that they don't contain a lot of pearlized pastas or couscous. That's just refined carbs. That's what we're trying to get us away from. But look for those that are dense in multiple grains, whole seeds. that's going to be where the fiber is, that's going to be where the nutrition is, and that's going to be where our protein, the extra protein is going to be. Grains are actually relatively high in protein. But this is something that's going to be shelf stable that you can keep in the cupboard and you can have on hand and cook off when you need it. Now, let's say you get that last minute text, you're in the grocery store, your list has already been made, you don't have time, and oh, by the way, did you remember we're having that cookout tonight in a couple of hours? That's when you can just quickly change gears and pick up a couple of bags of something like this. Now, the other reason why we like these better is because there's no sodium, there's no added ingredients, which you may find in some of these. So this is going to be your first choice. This is going to be your second choice. And then you can also find some of these cooked and in the frozen department.
And I want to just interrupt here. If you have not, and we do a lot of classes, Billy, just on the basics. I mean, that's what really real wellness is. It's teaching you the basics and teaching you how to get them in your life. It isn't about making fancy Food Network food. It's about really learning. Yep. So a lot of people will avoid this because simply they don't know how to cook it. And quite frankly, the first time I saw quinoa and it said rinse it, I was like, I don't have a strainer small enough to rinse that. So how do you rinse that in a regular colander?
What I would recommend is rather than worrying about a colander and the whole size, letting these just flush down the drain, put them into a bowl, fill it with water, slosh them around. The reason why we rinse quinoa and rice, we rinse for a different reason. With rices, we rinse those to remove excess starch to keep it from becoming pasty and gummy after it's cooked. The reason why we rinse quinoa is because there's actually a soapy tasting chemical on the surface of it that is the plant's natural defense mechanism against birds eating it. So we want to wash that off. So what we would do is we would put this into a bowl, slosh it around, and then let the grains settle to the bottom and pour the water off the top gently. Don't need the fine sieve. You can do that a couple of times just to make sure you get all of that sapacin off, and then you can go ahead and pour it into your saucepan and cook as you would. With quinoa, there are ratios of water to grain on the backside. You can follow those instructions, but again, if you have the extra water from the rinsing step, you can just add enough water to cover it to double the height, cook it until it's tender, and then rinse it off or pour off the excess water and just let the steam dry it naturally.
And so the other thing about convenience packages, and I love that wellness is really big out there right now.
Yeah, there's more and more of these things available.
This gives you the opportunity to actually try it without worrying about how to cook it. I mean, quite frankly, it's already cooked, right? But the biggest thing from
make sure that you know that you like it before you get the bag of this sitting and taking up space.
Yeah, because you're talking about like $10.99 versus $3.99. So let's talk economics. We're all about economics. And the biggest thing that I want to make you pay attention to is I went to the store to get these and I looked at them. And the biggest thing that we care about in the Real Wellness program is, first of all, what's our serving size? And second of all, what's our sodium level? So this has 240 milligrams of sodium. This 440 milligrams of sodium. If I'm just looking for a base product, I'm probably going to pick the lesser sodium one, depending on what the application is. And you always want to pay attention to application. And so look, what I love about your recipe, which you're about to show us, is that there was actually a prepackaged kind of vegetable Mexican looking quinoa. Now that was great, but when I turned it over and I started to look at some of the ingredients, yes, there were vegetables in it, but there were also things that we like to pretend are vegetables. Yeah. So this is the much better choice. Billy, why don't you tell us how to put it together? Okay.
So again, we're running off the assumption that, oh my gosh, I just got that reminder text message about the picnic tonight. So I'm going to get home and I've already picked up a couple of fully cooked grain options. So by having the quinoa and then the brown rice in here, this is going to give me a nice looking grain blend that's going to be attractive on the table. So I forgot to grab a spoon. So we're just going to go
old school?
Old school, yep. So,
or we could have Laura get us a spoon.
She's
hanging out. That's good, okay.
Okay. See, Grandma would also grab the knife. Break up the Graham didn't care. Graham wanted to get things done and not have extra dishes.
Actually, in my Italian household, that whole hand would have went in. You know, the rings come off, we're clean, and we just mix it all up. That's how we do it.
So mixing the grains up. Now, the nice thing about a vegetable product like this is that they're already sliced and diced. You just have to throw them in. They're already fully cooked. You can let these thaw at room temperature. You can pop it in the microwave to get the frost off of it. So we're just going to pop these in.
So you had asked me before we got started if I wanted you to cut these up. Billy, I actually find that they're a little bit more texture and depth when we have them larger. Why would I cut them up?
Well, it depends on who you're serving. Some people are going to look at all of these vegetables and go, wow, you just brought a veggie dish. Other people are going to look at this and go, wow, you brought a veggie dish. And so it depends on the crowd that you're serving. So if I had folks that really were focusing on the grains as being what they wanted, cutting the vegetables up smaller so we're hiding the vegetables in the grains is going to be how we get that across to that crowd. But if I've got people in the mix that are going to be more attracted to the vegetable side of it, I'm going to leave them big and let them taste all of those fantastic vegetables. The bright colors here, it's a show-stopping dish just because of the colors going on here. But with these pre-made grains, there is, like Selina said, a natural salt content to them. There's some sodium that's been used to season as well as to preserve them. So the salt is going to be the last thing that I reach for seasoning these things. The first thing I'm going to go for is pepper, though, because pepper is going to help all of those vegetables just really pop in terms of their flavor. And then the rest of the dressing is uber simple. I'm going to add some extra virgin olive oil. The reason why I'm using extra virgin here is because I want the flavor from the olives. Extra virgin olive oil has that rich color and rich flavor because the pressing of the olives leaves that behind, and these are just lightly filtered to get the chunks out. But it leaves behind a very rich flavor that complements the vegetables and the seasonings that are present. And I can be fairly generous with this much salad. This is about a pound of grains cooked, and then the pound of vegetables. So a good half cup of olive oil to help add moisture to all of this and add flavor. This is a seasoning now. This is a culinary choice. There's a difference between adding just oil for fat and adding oil for flavor. We're making culinary choices here. I wouldn't just reach for my soybean oil and add that much because I wanted an oil. As a matter of fact, if I had a choice between using soybean oil or canola oil or a corn oil, I would avoid those altogether because they're just adding fat. It's just going to be there for moisture. Whereas adding this oil is going to be for flavor. I could even add a nut oil to this, like an almond oil, if I wanted to add even more flavor and depth. I could even go with something really cool, like a macadamia oil, if I wanted to add a tropical flavor to it. And then the vinegar, I'm going to use a white wine vinegar. This could be a cider vinegar. This could also be balsamic vinegar. It doesn't have to be anything terribly fancy, but the point here is that you're adding more flavor. White vinegar is going to be acidic. It's going to give a punch. It's going to add brightness to the vegetables, but that's all it's going to do. It's just going to be acidic. Whereas if I add a white wine vinegar or another flavored vinegar like that, I'm adding flavor, and that's adding depth. And one of the things that Selina had mentioned or started to allude to with the vegetables, having that satisfaction from the texture and the crunch. When we build food for ourselves, when we build food to entice others, we want to increase and maximize those parts of the flavor that are really satiating.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I was just...
When you go out to the restaurant, well, yeah, but you know, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't catch on.
Yeah, they miss the point when it
When
comes to...
you go out to the restaurant and you eat something, sometimes you come home and
Can
you're
you smell this,
looking
Rich? Can you smell how wonderful this smells?
It's so delicious. I wish there was smell-o-vision. Rich, we should work on smell-o-vision. when you go out to a restaurant and you get your basic meat, potatoes, and steamed vegetable on the side, generally those are the dishes you can come home and still be looking for some food, because food is meant to satisfy all of your senses. And so the other thing I love about this salad choice is that it is so enticing, and I really do wish you could smell it. It's almost sensory enticing to the person. So even in a picnic where you think, oh my gosh, they're going to think that this is no good, this is ideal because, I mean, look at this. This is fantastic.
The aromas coming off of it, the colors, the textures, all of these things should be very suggestive and enticing to the person who's looking at this and investigating it. We talk about satiation in those principles when we're teaching our clients all the time, because the simplest culinary steps can have the biggest impact in increasing the amount of flavor. Cauliflower, for example, when you look at it, it's this white, crunchy vegetable that doesn't have a lot going on for it, but as soon as you take it and caramelize it and roast it in the oven, not only are you adding a different texture to it, but you're adding sweetness, you're adding depth of flavor, you're adding a quality called umami that adds sensory. It's just a ton of sensory inputs. Food should have that effect on you. Food should make you feel a positive emotion and not just being a filler for an immediate need in your stomach. But that's also where cooking comes into play. And by preparing food yourself, by being involved in that process, you are actually helping yourself on the digestive process, because you're priming your body to receive that great food. And then when you give it that oh, I've got it in my mouth now, you're having that completion of fulfillment.
So that's one of the things I love about when we're teaching our classes, especially the ones we'll be teaching in Chautauqua in July. It's not only just about that love, it's about loving yourself enough to put good food in your bellies and to fuel your bodies. So this is really what the Real Wellness Program is all about. We hope that you try the salad. We want you to reach out to us either on Facebook at The Way to Healthy Living or at thewaytohealthyliving.com. Make sure you follow us on WCTL.org. We're sharing good things for your wellness this Wednesday. So thanks for joining us, and thanks, Billy, always.
Thanks for having me.